Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be with all of you today, and I'm grateful to join you at the IOD conference, and a particular thanks to Miles Templeman for inviting me to give this address today. I certainly have found myself following some interesting acts in my career, but I never imagined that one day I would have to follow the Prime Minister's speech. Might be the most impressive opening act I've had, and while it might seem a daunting task to follow the Prime Minister, before you feel sorry for me, perhaps you should reserve your sympathy for Mr. Cameron, who now has to follow me following the Prime Minister. But David, if you're listening backstage, think of it this way. You're now just 1 degree of separation from actually following the Prime Minister, which is something we all know you aspire to in a much bigger sense. So, Brown to the left of me, Cameron to the right, here I am, stuck in the middle with you. I was, in fact, delighted to be included here today because of the efforts that this organization makes in supporting the development of its members. And of particular interest to me is that part of your charter is to ensure that your views are taken into account when government is reviewing policy, legislation, or simply seeking ideas from the wider business community. And since they have decided to sandwich me in between the two most powerful and important political figures in this country, I see this as a perfect moment to focus my remarks not just on why I believe strongly in increasing partnerships between business and the cultural communities, but also to open a discussion about the role that government plays in supporting arts and culture in the UK. So, why am I here today? What on earth could an actor and theater manager know about enterprise or business? Well, I'm certainly not dumb enough to stand up here and tell you all how you can achieve success in business. You know all about that more than me. But what I do understand and want to explore today is how much our cultural life contributes to the health and success of communities across the nation. Those who enjoy cinemas, theaters, dance companies, museums, galleries, any kind of cultural center or institution in the towns and villages and cities throughout Britain know well the value that these places people gather bring to the contribution to their community. And I'm talking about their economic value as well as their social value. I also want to touch today on what we value at the Old Vic Theatre, what has become in many ways the core of who we are, and that is the work we do under the umbrella of social enterprise. It has become vital to our ethos as a company to contribute as much as we can to our community and to broader London by being mentors to emerging talent in our educational programs and our community work and our interest in the development of young people, as well as the productions that we put on our stage. We believe that we can be a force of good within our community and our industry. Arts and cultural leaders believe that forging new connections between culture and business is a powerful endeavor and one that we have not taken full advantage of. These relationships offer both sides real opportunities to learn and grow and achieve financial success, both individually, but also to help generate income for the hotels and the restaurants and the many other countless businesses that populate neighborhoods in which theaters and cultural centers operate. Now, I am the artistic director of the Old Vic Theatre here in London, and I have been enormously encouraged at watching how the South Bank itself has developed, changed, and advanced in the 5 years since we began our new company. And I'd like to share with you today a little about my own background, because the story of how I got to this place in my own life, I think, will help explain why I believe so passionately in the value of arts and culture in partnership with the business community can contribute to people's lives. People often wonder why I took this path, why I am living and working down around Waterloo Station instead of sipping cocktails and collecting residual checks around a kidney-shaped swimming pool in Beverly Hills. Well, a lot of the reasons have to do with exactly the kind of programs that many of you in this room already support. And I hope that you all share my belief that arts and culture are not a luxury item in our lives. They are a necessity. Arts and culture are the magic of our experience. The words of a great writer, the style of a legendary dancer, the brilliance our favorite actors bring in displaying their craft, in bringing life to their roles, a piano concerto, the endless mystery of Mona Lisa's eyes, or the flickering images on celluloid and the countless stories they have told. Movies, plays, music, dance, painting, all these forms of human expression are such an important part of what we all share. They inspire, uplift, enrich, challenge, stimulate our conversations, enter our debates, and remain in our hearts. My own life has been blessed with amazing experiences and memories, many centered around the arts and all intertwined with some very, very generous people, men and women who have been such an influence on me. And that is why I hope that at the end of my remarks today, you will understand why I've ended up working on behalf of one of the most famous theaters in the world. But the scope of my commitment is broader than just the work that we are doing at the Old Vic. We hope it will have an effect on the cultural life in this city and this country, and why it is our intention to continue to make an argument for theater in as many places as we can. And I'll tell you why. I have both seen and experienced the positive effects that theater can have on a young person's life, because you're looking at someone who was given those experiences when I was a youngster. I can personally tell you what a difference it can make in a young person's life when they are given the chance to experience live performances or be involved in cultural programs through their schools. How much this can add to their growth and their prospects, and perhaps even in how they value themselves. Theater creates families and a sense of community that can have an extremely important effect on young people, whether they have an ambition to go into the arts or not. Using the tools and the artists of theater, we can teach young people to communicate, to express themselves, to find their own sense of confidence, build their self-esteem. Theater requires participation. There's no option to sit on the fence, watch from the sidelines, refuse to engage. It requires an emotional investment that helps us to express ourselves in a way which some may find difficult at first. So it all starts for me with opportunity and education. I grew up at a time when the arts were well supported in the United States. Raised in the suburbs of Los Angeles, I was quite fortunate to have found acting when I was very young. I was about 8 years old. And I was also lucky to have had some wonderful teachers and mentors who encouraged my first tentative steps toward becoming an actor. Later on, the foundation of my professional career was built on the backs of first-time directors, first-time producers, those who took me under their wing, sometimes long before I had showed any real potential. The other important fact to mention is that very often the best material I came across were the scripts that got chucked over the wall from people who didn't have agents or access or the ability to knock on the right doors. But in those first efforts, we believed in each other and we took a chance. I also know how life-changing it can be for a young person to stand on a stage in a workshop or a seminar or a school program, because these programs can show a young person how to collaborate, how to challenge, how to explore, and all of this can have a lasting effect on their lives. When I was just 13 years old, I attended a seminar with my drama class with the great legendary actor Jack Lemmon. I cannot begin to tell you what it meant to me after I did a scene from a play and he came over to me and put his hand on my shoulder and said, "That was your touch, terrific." "No, you're really talented. You ought to do this." He said, "But he's a good actor. Who the hell is that?" Well, I did think about becoming an actor. And 12 years later, I got cast as Jack's son in a Broadway production of Long Day's Journey into Night. We became great friends and acted together on 3 other occasions. So when I'm asked why I've turned the focus of my career away from films and toward the educational and development of emerging talent programs as the centerpiece of the work that we do at the Old Vic, the answers come tumbling out. I do it because a long time ago, people took a chance on me. Not only do I enjoy the experience now from this side, but I'm also repaying the debt I owe to those in my own life who first gave me a sense of confidence. So, where does the business community come into play in this conversation? In this digital, connected world, with so many choices of entertainment and interactive options at our fingertips, why are the arts, and my particular passion, theater, important to business? We live in an increasingly fragmented society. People migrate away from the place where they were raised in search of education or employment. Families live further apart than ever before. More people live alone now than at any time in our history. Modern life is chock full of many different kinds of pressures, and more of us are time poor than almost anything else. Television is one of the biggest mass media providers we have. And the power and impact of big, talked about television shows tells us that audiences want and need shared experiences. And while people love to watch the soaps and the big entertainment shows, talk about them in the office the next day, text their friends, visit websites, maybe even blog about them, live entertainment, whether a concert or an opera or a theater production, unites people in a way that is incomparable. To sit in a theater or an arena, go to a comedy club, hear a story, listen to a piece of music, these experiences bring people together in a unique and important way that television cannot match. Now, this is a timely conversation because as we build toward the 2012 Olympic Games, it is vital that London does not ignore the value of what arts and culture can contribute in reflecting the great Olympic ideals of endeavor, aspiration, cultural diversity, and human beings challenging themselves to do quite remarkable things. That's why I was pleased a few weeks ago to welcome the London Development Agency's commitment to additional funds for cultural programs that reflect Olympic values. And I will lend my full support to the development of a cultural Olympiad which can unite communities and bridge the gap which too often divides our understanding of each other and the world around us. Why is this important to all of you? Because business needs the community to be healthy. It's what provides its workforce and its customers. Theater allows us to reflect our experiences, to share, to communicate, to explore ideas, resolve conflicts. It enlightens, it inspires, and allows us to tell stories and provides ways to reach people that might have eluded them in the past. It gives us a route to improving the quality of life and the experience of the next generation, not just of theater goers, but of our workforce. All of this is beneficial to business because it contributes to interpersonal skills. It translates into customer care. It provides a path to confidence and improves presentational skills. That's why business supporting the arts is beneficial to both sides. It's not charity or empty philanthropy. It's an investment in the future of our communities, indeed, our very society. So it's not just about business investing in the arts, it's about what investing in the arts can do for business. I, for one, do not want to see another regeneration scheme that does not have some aspect of arts and culture at the heart of its offer. Without it, we are not building rounded communities. We are instead ignoring the soul of society and focusing only on the bricks and mortar. Now, I believe it's important that arts remain at the top of the agenda for government, even at a time when economic issues might be dominating and culture can seem less important. But look at Labor's success in the arts and culture since the late 1990s. They were the government that released over £190 million into arts institutions, galleries, schools, educational opportunities, and the continuing support of some of our finest theaters across London and throughout Great Britain. And it has always been with great affection that I look to our Scottish neighbors and our Irish friends, whom have given so much of themselves, their writing and language, to some of the most treasured works of art and plays and poetry, and have done so much in their own countries to support and nourish the arts. But for as many successes as this investment in arts and culture has provided, we might have unwittingly arrived at something of a disconnect. There used to be a general acceptance in government that culture had a positive effect on people's lives, and that was a good amount of the motivation behind the funding that was committed by the government. But of course, with investment comes the need for return, and politicians and bureaucrats needing tangible evidence of its effects. In the past decade, as a result, we have seen a rise in the number of boxes that now have to be ticked by those seeking funding, sometimes with what appears to be the same measuring stick each time out, when not all things can be judged on the same criteria. Why does it feel that those who govern the arts have lost faith in its practitioners? Why do those in the arts have to tick so many boxes to qualify for support? Who is being served by the hoops that have to be jumped through and the obstacles we need to surmount in order to gain financial backing many institutions need to deliver their cultural programs? So much time is spent focusing on the diversity of the organizations delivering arts programs that too little time is spent on the diversity of the audiences that they serve. Too much time on box ticking, too little time throwing down the gauntlet to those with the ambition and the ability to engage audiences on a large scale, to appeal to the many and not the few. We believe that government should fund the arts as a priority because it's good for the whole of society. The more funding an organization has, the cheaper its ticket prices can be, and we all know that nothing puts people off more than expensive tickets. What do government want in return for their funding? We should not have to guess. There, of course, must be standards by which to judge the work and the purpose behind each project that the government bodies support. But I would say that the sooner we return to the days when the practitioners of the craft were trusted, then our understanding of the role that government should play and what it wants to achieve through its support of the arts will become better defined. Everyone I talk to in the cultural community is energized and excited by London's diversity. We embrace it. We want to connect to the broadest possible audiences, to encourage people to experience a play, go to a concert, a seminar, a festival, a museum, whatever. We want them to come in, and we must do everything we can to make them feel welcome and to make it affordable. So, trust the practitioner. Trust the craftsman just as you would trust the teacher or the doctor. I have been encouraged by the kinds of conversations I have heard from the funding bodies that are given the enormous responsibility of awarding public funds, that they do want to embrace practitioners again. The directors, playwrights, producers, stage managers, designers, performers, and countless others who must be included when changes or improvements to a system that affects us all. What companies will be given the privilege to continue their work? What areas of what communities are being given cultural and educational opportunities? How can we encourage minorities to apply for programs that might sit outside their family traditions and expectations? How many people do our educational programs actually reach? All these questions can only be answered fairly and accurately with the involvement and the voices of those with the experience, the commitment, the passion, and the dedication to their craft. I mean, really, we are so blessed to have such remarkable practitioners of so many talents living and working in this country that we must take advantage of their leadership, their experience, and their skills. It is quite astounding what has been achieved in this country culturally. And it is hugely important that we continue to support and underpin London's leadership in the arts, which is central to its status as a leading world city. Our cultural landscape is the jewel in Britain's crown, with London a particular shining example, with a range and diversity of arts organizations that put it well ahead of any city in Europe and beyond. But we cannot and we should not take it for granted. The individual artist may not always be to everyone's taste, but the society we live in is happier, healthier, more intelligent, and a more inclusive place as a result of the work that they do. Chekhov said, "Man only gets better when you show him what he's like." So, what is the job of an actor? To become someone else. What is the first step in that process? See things from their point of view. As actors, we get very good at seeing things from other people's points of view. It's a habit we're forced into. And this seems to me important, enormously important, in an age of fundamentalism, where everywhere we look, people are refusing to have empathy or understanding of a position which is not their own. But acting forces you to empathize. I think it can have a hugely civilizing influence. If you're habitually forced and required to understand people in order to portray them, it becomes very difficult to be prejudiced against them. Drama is a great humanizing force. Now, some art is very difficult, it's true. Indeed, a lot of the best art is. It's important to understand that most worthwhile things are, and take time and require application and understanding. 5 hours of culture a week for kids sounds terrific. But let's use some of that time to teach kids about other times, other styles, other lives. Let's not just paraphrase Shakespeare into modern English, but take the time to look up the difficult words so that we can understand them in the original. Let's understand and enjoy the past so that we can understand and enjoy the future. So my call is the arts must and should be supported. Because if more theaters close in our rural cities, if more cultural centers face a threatening economic future, if more of the smaller venues lose their funding, then the more the business community is going to be called upon to sponsor and support the arts. A tide of threatening scenarios has been moving throughout our country of late. It's frightened many in arts and culture, and not just them, but the public as well. And if we don't ebb this tide, we risk losing and allowing our rich cultural heritage and work to start to fade from view, reserved only for those that can afford to come to the big cities. And in addition, if we lose more of the places where emerging talent can develop, then where does a young person go to learn their craft? How does someone ever get their work onto a national stage if there's no place to start out when you're young and eager to find who you are, desperately to challenge and develop your own talent? I believe the government needs to understand and reflect in its policies that they believe that arts and culture can inform, educate, and inspire. The arts do that with a richness and a diversity that is unrivaled and that should be celebrated and protected by those in positions of power. And we should be unafraid to raise the conversation of the relationship between government and the arts, its strengths and its weaknesses, regardless of how others might want to frame these discussions. To express an opinion or to ask a question is not an attack on policy, but rather a healthy debate that should be the first step toward finding better, positive solutions. Actually, speaking of how things are sometimes played out in this country, I was interested a few weeks ago to see how my comments about reality entertainment programs on the BBC were presented. In case you didn't see the coverage, these are the shows that seek to find stars of major musicals via a televised casting process. Now, in my comments, I just want to say I was not attacking Andrew Lloyd Webber or anyone who has found success on these programs. I love musicals, I grew up performing them, and yes, I can stand here and admit to you today, I played Captain Von Trapp in my high school production of The Sound of Music. Thank you very much. Now, my comments were simply to question whether it is appropriate role for the BBC, which is a public broadcasting service, to be involved in a show that is nothing if not a 13-week promotional and advertising vehicle for single West End shows. I think it's a healthy conversation. What is the role of public broadcasting? And the broader question of where is the balance of programming for straight plays and other types of programs about the living theater, education, and so forth that would give the legitimate theater the kind of exposure that television and its broad audience offer. If these programs had been on a commercial network, say ITV or Channel 4, I would have had no place to make any comment. And while the BBC has stated that they do not believe these programs are, quote, unduly promotional, unquote, it should be fairly clear that, in fact, they are. However, in the spirit of if you can't beat 'em, join 'em, I am delighted to announce today that I'm going to celebrate one of my most famous roles by hosting the BBC One's latest amateur talent show, I Am Kaiser Soze. Inspired by the usual suspects, I will challenge a dozen young hopefuls to show why they deserve to fill the shoes of the legendary Turkish drug dealer and homicidal maniac Kaiser Soze. Some of Britain's hottest young crime lords are queuing up to take part in what will be the corporation's summer schedule. In round one, setting fire to a boat full of thieves, the contestants will be given 15 minutes to douse petrol all over a cargo ship, and then I will award extra points for the nonchalant way the contestants use their gold Zippo lighters to ignite a murderous inferno. Round three is the self-explanatory killing your entire family to show you mean business. And in round four, the surviving contestants will rampage across Eastern Europe, wiping out dozens of rival drug dealers and burning their homes to the ground. In the final show, the two remaining hopefuls will have to convince me and the viewing public that they do not actually exist. And that none of this has actually happened. The newly crowned Kaiser Soze of 2008 will then be handed control of a vast crime network and be driven away from the studio by a Mr. Kobayashi lookalike. When asked about this, a BBC spokesman commented, "Who is Kaiser Soze?" No, I mean really, I've watched the movie like 7 times, I still don't get it. I have to give credit to the Daily Mash, which I discovered that piece on the web when I was surfing. I thought it was very funny and I wanted to share it with you today. Hopefully, this afternoon I've answered the question most often asked of me, why the old Vic? Well, I believe that if you've been successful in what you wanted to do in your life, then it's your obligation to spend a good portion of your time sending the elevator back down. That was a phrase that my dear friend and mentor Jack Lemmon used to say, and something that I have adopted as my own. Whatever your organization attempts to achieve, both from its philanthropic endeavors to its commercial aspirations, avoid those who choose to be negative or cynical, because being negative takes no effort at all and must be a rather unsatisfying way to go through your day. And while I realize that having a positive attitude won't solve all your problems, it might just annoy enough people along the way to make the effort worthwhile. I've tried today to tell you how much my experience has been shaped by those who came before me, what drives me now and motivates me today, and what I hope will continue to inspire those that follow. The truth is, all of us can send the elevator back down, because it doesn't matter what floor you're on. In life, there's always someone just below, just waiting for the chance to be invited in. I want to wish you all the very best as you seek out your own paths, challenge your world, and achieve your own ambitions. Always try to stay open to new ideas. Be willing to listen, because, as I've learned, new ideas can come from anywhere. Sometimes they're the ones that get chucked over the wall. Our job is to make sure the walls we create are not so high that the new ideas can no longer reach us. In closing, let me tell you that this kid from the United States feels very fortunate to have been given the chance to live out his dreams here in London. I feel honored working on behalf of the Old Vic Theatre, for unlike any theater I have ever worked in, it is truly a magical place filled with energy, memories, a soul, and I believe its greatest asset, its future. I appreciate you being so attentive, and I wish you all a very good afternoon. God bless. My thanks to all of you. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you please thank Kevin Spacey.